When you think about organizations that have been a bad way for a period of time in the NFL, one of those teams that really stood out to you over the past decade plus were the Oakland Raiders. You talk about a team that hadn't made the playoffs since the 2002 season when they lost big that year in the Super Bowl to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Um, you just looked at the Raiders, and for so many years, they were just so irrelevant on so many different levels. It was clear for anybody to see that Al Davis was running them into the ground. And as much as Al Davis was the NFL to me in a lot of ways, and as much as he will always be the ultimate of Raiders, the fact of the matter is, there was that feeling similar to me years back when Bill Fold Wirtz, as I used to call him, and people in Chicago used to call him, the owner of the Blackhawks, passed away. It was like, now he's died. Now this organization can fucking be relevant again and they can get good. And that's exactly what happened 3 Stanley Cups later. Looking at Al Davis's passing, to me, it was a blessing in disguise. Now, while people don't want to look at it that way or talk about it that way, at the end of the day, it was. Because you could clearly see that this is a guy that the NFL game had passed by, that he was too impatient because he was fearing his own mortality. He wasn't giving coaches a chance. He was giving them crappy players. He was making horrible draft decisions, horrible decisions in free agency. All you have to say about the tail end of Al Davis's life and his tenure as owner of the Oakland Raiders that sums it up and encapsulates it so perfectly, Jamarcus Russell. End of discussion. But, as time goes along, Reggie McKenzie comes over from the Packers organization, takes over as the general manager for the Oakland Raiders. And honestly, early on, it didn't look good. It didn't look like things were going to be any different. You're talking about a team with their 2013 draft, DJ Hayden in the first round, Menelik Watson in round 2. I mean, Reggie McKenzie really didn't hit it out of the park with that one, to be polite. Trying to pay a bum like Roger Saffold huge money in free agency only to have the founder's son, the new owner, Mark Davis, override your ass on that crappy contract because of concerns about a physical. I mean, you were looking at Reggie McKenzie, and to me at least, even though people were trying to be positive about it, the fact of the matter was the early results were absolutely god-awful and terrible and brutal. This was a shitty Raiders team. And it looked like McKenzie was taking them down a path of maintaining that shittiness, if not increasing the stench of that shittiness for years to come. But it's interesting to me how somebody who is going down such a bad path, all of a sudden it's like one day a bug flew up his ass and he figured out how to actually be an NFL general manager and be a good one. That 2014 draft was really a franchise changer for this team. To have other teams be idiots in front of you, to have Khalil Mack fall into your lap at pick 5, and then best thing of all for the Oakland Raiders, they didn't get cute, they didn't overthink it, they didn't go for this, they didn't do that. They said, Khalil Mack fell to us, we're going to fucking take him. Then in round 2, to turn around to get Derek Carr and draft a guy, I think in round 3 like Gabe Jackson, in round 4 like Justin Ellis, Big Jelly, if you want to call him that. That draft class right there, especially with Khalil Mack, Derek Carr, that was the moment in time that you felt like something different was about to happen in Oakland. They weren't there yet, and it was going to take time, and it was going to be important to do things right a couple of years in a row. But that 2014 draft had that feeling of, this is going to be the franchise changer. This is going to be the moment where you look back in time and you say, this is when the Oakland Raiders started to matter again. And ultimately, even though 2014 wasn't a great year, Khalil Mack was a stud, Derek Carr started, end of the year, they won a couple of games. They improved in 2015. You got to 2016 and you got to the point in time where now you've got Derek Carr leading the offense. You've got Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper, the 2015 first-round pick, in the receiving core. On the defensive side of the ball, you've got Khalil Mack being the super stud that he is. You've brought in guys like free agents Kalichi Osemele and Bruce Irvin and Donald Penn. And you start to look at this Raiders team, and you start to look at them and you say, 2016 can be something for this team. This team is ready to go to the playoffs. This is the season. While the 2014 draft, I believe, is a seminal moment in time, where the trajectory of the Oakland Raiders organization changed for a decade plus. It was 2016 was supposed to be the season where this organization's fortunes really truly changed and all that promise and potential started to be realized on the football field. And it ultimately was. This was a really good Raiders team in 2016. Even though their defense was pretty bad, you're talking about a team that still went 12-4 and lost the AFC West in a tiebreaker to Kansas City. And even when you look deeper, the Raiders' 4 losses this year were to the Atlanta Falcons, who should have been Super Bowl 51 champions if they didn't piss a 25-point lead down their leg. You're talking about losing to Kansas City twice, and then Denver, when they didn't have Derek Carr. Those are their 4 losses. And it's interesting because, to me, as positive as this season was for the Raiders on so many different levels, so many years of not mattering, to all of a sudden, the Raiders are good again. They're very good again. They're 12-4. They're a playoff team. There's still a disappointment because you feel like maybe they could have been a little more. And you hate to see, especially what happened in that Colts game when Derek Carr breaks his leg and he goes down for the year. It's like, damn it. The NFL needs the Raiders to be really, really good. And they're on the precipice, the cusp of being really, really good. And you could maybe argue they were almost really, really good in 2016. Then to have a bad break, pardon the pun, Raiders fans, but to have a bad break like Derek Carr breaking his leg and going out for the year, I thought it was very appropriate when Jack Del Rio just recently said, what did you learn from this season and your playoff loss is that you don't want to lose your starting quarterback, something to that effect, as it's true. I mean, Carr had an MVP caliber type of season. It sucks because, maybe they could have won a playoff game. Maybe they'd beat Houston. Maybe they could have made it to the division round. Who knows what could have happened. But just the fact that the Raiders made it back to the playoffs for the first time in 15 seasons, or 14 seasons, whatever, just for the simple fact that the Raiders are relevant again. That was one of the major successes and one of the major positives from a very crappy 2016 NFL season. And now, for a guy like Reggie McKenzie, who's done a lot of good in recent years, it's going to be up to him to get this organization to take that next step to where they should be, which is contending with the New England Patriots and the Steelers and teams like that in the AFC for the right to go to the Super Bowl. Now, in this offseason, the Raiders have a little over $40 million in salary cap space, so even some of the money they've spent in free agency in recent years, they haven't gone hog wild. They've learned from some previous mistakes, and I think they've spent their money more intelligently, and as a result, they still have some cap space. Now, I don't expect them to go hog wild in free agency, nor should they, but it might be wise for them to upgrade the tight end position by pursuing somebody like a Martellus Bennett. Now, granted, it's always risky bringing him and his personality and his attitude into a locker room, but in some ways he feels like he could be a Raider, and man, he would really add another element to that passing game for Derek Carr and that Oakland Raiders offense. My God. Could you imagine Crabtree, Cooper, Derek Carr throwing the ball, and now you've got Martellus Bennett there too? Maybe they should kick the tires on somebody like a Darrelle Revis. I realize he sucked in 2016, and Revis Island was quicksand island because he looked like he was running in quicksand. But you're talking about a guy who just got cut by a crappy Jets team. He's lost out on a lot of money. He's got the 4 felony charges kind of hanging over him in a cloud. These are the type of guys that maybe you can bring in. A guy that's been a part of a Super Bowl champion team, a guy who's been a multiple-time All-Pro at the NFL level. Maybe you get 1 or 2 solid seasons out of this guy, and he would be a huge upgrade based off of what you had in the secondary if he was able to do that. But with that said, there are 2 priorities for the Raiders in this offseason, even more important than the NFL draft. Priority number 1 is re-signing Khalil Mack. They must re-sign Khalil Mack now. I know you could just pick up the 5th-year option. You can punt the ball down the road another year or 2. You don't wait. You do it now. The dude is arguably the best defensive lineman in football. He is arguably the best defensive player in football. As much as Derek Carr, Khalil Mack is the true franchise player of the Oakland Raiders. Because at the end of the day, he is the guy where everything changed for the Oakland Raiders. He is the representation of that. He was the franchise changer, first and foremost. Make no mistake about it. That's when everything changed for the Raiders. And as a result, there are points in time where you have to make a statement. And to me, a powerful statement for the Raiders would be to sit there and say, after 3 years, we're going to do what good, smart football organizations would do. We take our young superstars and we re-sign them long term, give them more money now, we save some money down the road potentially, and we make sure that we keep them as the linchpin building blocks that they're supposed to fucking be. Priority one is re-signing Khalil Mack this offseason period. There is no excuse for just picking up his fifth-year option and kicking the ball down the road another year. You have the cap space to get it done now. Front load that shit now. Get it done. The other number one priority that is equally as important pretty much is re-signing Derek Carr, because since he was a second-round pick, his rookie contract was only for 4 years, meaning after 2017 he is heading into free agency. I know he's coming off of a broken leg, but who gives a fucking shit? The dude is a franchise quarterback. The dude is that dude for the Oakland Raiders. Derek Carr is a dude that could potentially lead the Raiders, back to the Super Bowl and have the Raiders get their 4th Lombardi trophy. That's the type of dude that Derek Carr has developed into. That's the type of dude that he has proven himself to potentially be. You do not screw around. You do not fuck around. You do not sit there and say, well, we want him to prove it in 2017, and then we'll franchise him, and then we can always franchise him a second time. And that's the type of dumb shit that the Washington Redskins do. And they're doing that with Kirk Cousins. And Derek Carr is much better than Kirk Cousins, period. If the Raiders do 2 things in this offseason, even if they don't get any big-name free agents or spend any money in free agency, even if they don't do well in the draft, the 2 most important things they can do, the only 2 priorities, in my opinion, that they have are to re-sign Khalil Mack and Derek Carr, period. Because those are statement re-signings. That's sitting there and saying you understand what it takes to win. You understand who the leaders of your success have been and who are going to continue to be, and that you don't give a shit about anything. You'll make Derek Carr the highest paid quarterback in the league until the next quarterback signs a contract, and you'll make Khalil Mack the highest paid defensive player in the league. That's what you do. If you want to win a Super Bowl by 2017, 2018, 2019, if you're the Oakland Raiders, you get those 2 contracts done, period. And I know I've spent a lot of time talking about it. I could spend a lot more time talking about it. And I think Raiders fans at the end of the day understand the importance and significance of it. While you could potentially wait another year or 2 to re-sign Khalil Mack, why the fuck would you? Furthermore, while you could potentially wait another season before you start worrying about Derek Carr's contract, again, why the fuck would you? These guys have shown that they're worth the money. Now it's time to pony up the dough. In terms of the draft, though, I don't want to sit there and just completely blow it off and say all that matters is Mack and Carr. Because honestly, McKenzie's done a decent job in recent drafts. It'd be nice to see him bring in some other nice talent as well. In terms of their draft needs, I think their number one need is running back. Latavius Murray is a free agent, and even if they had designs on re-signing him, I don't really see him being a quality starting running back in the National Football League, and I don't think 2016 showed you or proved you any differently. And frankly, I don't think the coaching staff is all that bought into him. You need a more consistent, effective running game to bring some balance to the force of the Raiders' offense, especially that passing game, and to help keep your defense off the field. That's the number one need. Otherwise, other big needs you could say are corner, definitely corner, because they really don't have much there but a bunch of bag of donuts, and that's just a fact. They stink in the secondary at the corner position. They have to get better there. And I'm sure some Raiders fans are going to sit there and say that's the number one need. And I won't begrudge you that point because it's very valid. I just happen to think running back is the number one need. But they really need some help at corner, and they also almost equally need some help inside on the defensive line. They need some type of one-gap penetrator really, really badly. I also think they could use a better option at tight end. But at the end of the day, when all is said and done, repeat it with me. Dear Oakland Raiders, re-sign Khalil Mack and Derek Carr. Do it now. Don't fuck around. Because if you get it done, you'll win a Super Bowl in 2 to 3 years.